You ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Welcome to Slashback Cinema, the podcast where we rewind to the glory days of 70s and 80s horror movies. I am Shawnee Luft.
And I'm Ryan Drymiller.
We miss those iconic, classy, and cheesy horror films from our childhood, from slashers to the supernatural. So we're here to rewatch the classics that made us scream and maybe cringe a little, while we find out if they still pack a punch or just make us laugh. Ryan, what's on our menu for today?
Today, we're going to watch and discuss The Thing from 1982. This was John Carpenter's first big-budget film. It was a screenplay by Bill Lancaster and starred Kurt Russell.
John Carpenter, there's no way to avoid him if you're talking about 70s and 80s horror movies. He's like the man. He's made so many classic, iconic movies.
Yeah, it's him and Wes Craven, 70s and 80s horror, were those two guys. So Halloween was his first big one. That one was a huge commercial success and really put him on the scene. And then
it kind of kicked off the slasher genre, like Friday the 13th. All that stuff comes after Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween was super low budget. We talked about some of these directors starting out and just working with minimal budget, getting really creative, and it was a runaway success. So he definitely was hot in Hollywood. He did The Fog right after that one, and that was a success also. And then we get into The Thing, which commercially a failure. Like it did not do well at the box office. So yeah, highs and lows for John Carpenter.
Yeah, that really surprised me. The Thing is such an iconic movie, and so many directors have talked about how it influenced them. I was reading Tarantino talked about how much he liked The Thing and how it influenced several of his movie choices and stories. I was really surprised how badly The Thing was received. The critics slammed this movie. They hated it.
Yeah, they hated it. Yeah, I think it was the same summer or year that E.T. released, and apparently America was really looking for cute and cuddly alien extraterrestrials versus horrific goo-covered gore splatter alien creatures. Also, The Thing wasn't trying to sell us Reese's Pieces, so that could have been a piece of what impacted the movie's success.
The Thing was selling human pieces.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, 1982 in film, we were both, 10 years old?
Yeah.
That's quite a year. E.T. is the number one movie. First Blood came out. Rocky 3 came out. Porky's was on the top 10 list. Star Trek 2, one of the best Star Trek movies.
God.
And then 48 Hours, Poltergeist. There are so many good movies from this time period, like 82, 83, 84. It's a great time to be a kid watching movies.
Yeah, I could say my parents took me to see E.T. and Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, but they did not take me to see The Thing. That was on the not to be seen by small children list.
Do you remember the first time you saw it?
I was trying to think when I saw this for the first time. I was in high school or late middle school. I definitely didn't see it when it came out, though. How about you?
So we had HBO relatively early on. And my recollection is The Thing was on pretty regularly. HBO at that time would just play a handful of movies and then they would just run them every day. So you could just watch the same movie over and over again. But I do remember feeling like this movie is exceptionally frightening. This doesn't seem like a regular movie. This seems like nightmare fuel.
Totally. I was thinking about that too. Two of the most heavy and intense movies came out right around the same time period in that sci-fi horror genre, which always felt to me when it's done well, the scariest. It's like driving that primal fear. It's isolation. It's the setting. There's no hope. It's these cold environments. And it was Alien and The Thing. Like those two movies. And then much later in the 90s, Event Horizon came out. And those three, sci-fi horror, scary shit. And they had this totally different feeling to them that I don't think other horror movies captured in the same way.
Event Horizon was so scary to me. I went to see it with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. And we were in the theater, and I was so terrified. I just closed my eyes in the movie, but I didn't hold my hands up. I was trying to be a cool guy and be brave. I'm like, this movie is so scary. I just tried to fall asleep while in the theater to try to be as cool as possible. God damn,
Jim's like, are you all right, Shawnee? Oh, good. I'm good, babe. Everything's cool. Not scared at all.
The only time I've been more scared in a movie is when the two of us went to see Interview with a Vampire, and then halfway through the movie, she leaned over and bit me on the neck, and I screeched so loud that half the theater turned to see what had happened to that poor young child. That's two horror movies I saw with Kim that traumatized me, but not The Thing. Let's do a quick summary here for people in case they don't remember.
It's a group of American researchers. They're in Antarctica, and they are basically buzzed by this Norwegian helicopter. That crew comes down. They've been trying to shoot this dog. And then
Yeah, that's the opening scene is people trying to shoot a dog. It's like already startling.
yes. And so the Norwegians discovered this thing. It's an extraterrestrial life form, basically assimilates and then takes over other organisms. And then the group's overcome by paranoia as they try and figure out who's been infected. They can't trust each other. And then it goes from there as they try to take out the thing.
Right. So that husky, that dog you're seeing at the beginning is like the first version of the alien that you see in the movie. But then it can morph into any human being, or I guess any living creature, right?
Yeah. Well, right out of the gate, I mean, if you want to get popcorn in the first 5 seconds of this movie, you already kind of missed the key point, because they open with the spaceship that's flying towards Earth and crashes.
Yeah.
And then cuts to that scene of this helicopter pilot trying to shoot this dog. You're like, what the hell's going on? So
right.
They're right on the gas, right out of the gate. And then the story just keeps ratcheting up the tension. It keeps you a bit on your heels as you're trying to figure out,
right,
okay, what's happening with the story. And then, yeah, the creature itself just was next level. The original movie that this was based on was The Thing from Another World, which in that 50s movie, the Thing was this guy in a rubber suit or wearing makeup or whatever. This creature was the gold standard in horror special effects. Like it was different in each scene and so inventive and so disturbing, from the dog form of it to that spider head version.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. It's my favorite scene. Yeah, that's a great one. And so the plot of the story, it does borrow this like one element of the 1950s version, which is this kind of anxiety about communism, because there's 13 scientists in this scientific outpost, and they don't know which one of them has turned into the Thing, and so they all start to turn against each other. And that's the whole story, basically, is the rising paranoia, as nobody knows who's actually human and who's not. And so you spend the whole movie like looking for any clue that somebody is about to snap or lose it. And there's some great reveals. Watching it this time, I was surprised how long the movie goes without a jump scare or a really dramatic thing. It just really sets it up and ratchets up the tension with some good storytelling and some clear place setting, so you understand where they are and what people's jobs are. Basically, they get picked off one by one until there's two guys left, and then it ends, and you're left kind of unsure. Is one of them the alien, or neither of them the alien? But it seems like they're both about to die regardless. They're going to freeze to death, and that's the end of the movie.
It got criticized for how the movie ended, but I thought the way they closed it out with, it didn't get resolved. It was left as a question. These two guys sitting there kind of looking at each other, being like, well, here we are.
Right. I have noticed that horror movies that end without a sense of overcoming the evil do sometimes feel particularly unnerving when the evil wins. That's not super common in most of these movies.
No.
Where the hero basically gets overcome and the evil seems to win or is about to win. And so that's part of what makes it unsettling. Part of what I liked about the movie, I was watching it with my wife and my son, and one thing that he and I were talking about was...
good family film there.
Exactly. Around Thanksgiving, we like to watch.
Watch
people's heads turn into spiders and crawl across the floor. He was saying what he liked about it is that the people in the movie are pretty smart. They don't do a lot of dumb horror movie tropes. They are trying to figure it out. They are actually running experiments. They are openly communicating with each other about what they know. And that in and of itself makes it stand out. The guys are doing their best, and they still seem unable to overcome it.
Yeah, I agree. The only bad move was them going to that Norwegian base, and then they find this burnt up, horrible thing. And rather than perhaps leave it there, they pack it up and bring it back to their base. So, that was maybe not the best move. But otherwise, I agree. They were coming up with that blood test and some of the ways to solve who's been infected.
I did have questions about the OSHA standards in this movie. The doctors are doing autopsies. They're not wearing masks. Goo is squirting everywhere. They don't seem at all concerned about spreading airborne illnesses.
No.
Back in the 80s, people didn't know about airborne diseases. No. So what are some of your favorite scenes from this movie? What stood out to you?
Towards the beginning of the movie, by the way, I love the fact that Kurt Russell's character he's got the 80s name of Mac Reddy. Yes. That's pretty 80s right there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But so it's him at the beginning sitting in front of that chess game, and he's playing this very 80s looking chess game with the computer, and the computer's talking to him. The computer intelligence beats him, and his reaction to it is to take his whiskey and throw it into the machine, so it blows up the machine.
Your move, king to rook 1. My move, rook to knight 6. Checkmate. Checkmate.
Cheating bitch.
Which I thought was a nice little kind of preview of what's to come as they take on the alien intelligence, and the solution is just break out the dynamite and the flamethrowers. We're gonna burn this thing and blow it up. So that was cool.
I did get a kick out of the 80s technology. When you see computer games in 1982, that's what the games we played look like. Boy, it's funny you bring up the chess scene, because the movie did cause me to reflect on how insane technology has gotten over the course of the last 40 years. If you think about what computers looked like when we started, how gigantic they were and how limited they were.
The other scene I thought was great was that blood test scene. So it was MacReady. Yes. He's got everybody tied up in the room, and there's been this high stakes interaction beforehand. And he's essentially cutting everyone's finger to take their blood. He's got a little petri dish, and then he's got his flamethrower. He's heating up the copper wire, and then they're cutting around to each person in the room. Are you the thing? And then he sticks the hot wire in there with the presumption that because the blood is actually the thing, it will react to a threat to it.
Right.
And just the way that all comes together, and then the way it gets resolved with, I think it's Palmer. There's that insane sequence of him transporting the thing, blowing up, shooting onto the ceiling. Everybody's still tied up and freaking the fuck out.
Yes. Yeah.
The one guy that was tied to the chair with those guys, they finally test him, and he's not one of the thing's mutated beings.
I know you gentlemen have been through a lot. And when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!
What a great way to take away the tension after such an intense scene.
That sequence was pretty remarkable. And then the thing bites a guy's head, and then he starts to turn. It seemed like everything the thing touches, then you become another thing. It's odd to me that there's only basically one monster at a time that they're dealing with, right? Because the thing touches something, and then whatever it touches becomes the thing. But by the logic of the movie, there should be multiple things. Whereas, in fact, in the storyline, the way it seems to work like its soul just travels from thing to thing. It's not explained that way. It's just explained that, it passes on this virus. But it only seems to be one creature at a time that you have to worry about. I don't know if that's ever explained or explored in the movie, but it doesn't quite seem logical based on how the biology was explained.
Right, because they do allude to it having this exponential growth curve and infecting the entire world population. Maybe it's because they're taking him out one at a time successfully with the flamethrower, or but you're right. They keep dealing with a different form of it in these
There's just one
sequential scenes. Yeah.
There's a scene early on where that dog that opens the movie is, you find out later, is the thing. Then they put that dog into a dog kennel. And boy, that scene is horrifying.
It's horrifying.
Not a lot of movies these days will open with, we're going to kill a whole bunch of dogs. I feel like it really communicates to you right off the bat whether or not you're going to stick around for this movie.
And it's shot in such a way you could see enough that you're like, oh my God. What? And there's that sequence as it starts to transform where those whip tentacles are coming out of the dog as it's turning into the thing. Like,
that was gross.
Oh my God. And then it's shooting that gelatinous liquid at the other dogs. Right. Oh, man.
I always like to get your take on the artistic expression of this creature, because multiple times in the movie, it's kind of like a melted biological creature. The thing they find at the Norwegian camp is like two guys whose faces are melted together. Yeah. You can't tell where one's head is. And the same thing happens with those dogs. It takes over the dog, but then it also seems like it morphs in such a way that it creates this grotesquerie of a biological creature.
They were saying the idea behind that was that it's becoming whatever it's merged with, but it still holds the memory or the pieces of other creatures that it's bonded with. The idea was in some other galaxy or some other life form, it all gets blended together, but in a horrifying way.
Yeah.
Creature to creature, incredibly inventive.
Yeah.
Different forms, different ways it manifested, different ways it moved. Rob Bottin was the special effects guy for this one, and he was young. He was in his early 20s when he did this movie. He worked on it 7 days a week for a full year, wound up having to be hospitalized because he had worked so hard on this movie once it was wrapped. But he really took to the next level with this creature, and the way they brought it to life. And this was all pre-CGI. So you're talking about it's actual special effects done with latex and KY jelly and mayonnaise and cream corn and whatever they could find.
They do a good job creating what looks like biological mass or something. Watching it again this weekend, there were parts I didn't remember at all. But boy, I definitely remembered the scene where they're doing the chest.
Because the guy's had a heart attack or whatever.
Yes, and they're doing and boy, I remembered that scene like second by second when the guy's chest opens up and turns into this crazy weird mouth thing and then bites the guy's arms off. Then everything that happens for the next 10 minutes, it just ratchets up and up and up and gets more and more insane. So then the thing climbs out of the guy's chest and then it's all super deformed and crazy. And this half-formed dog comes out, which I didn't understand, but you just explained it. It's keeping the genetic blueprint of all the things it's ever been. And then they set it on fire, and then the head rips off and falls down, and then the head becomes a spider, and then it crawls. I was surprised they didn't make this last longer. Like, you see the guys talking, and the little spider with a human head crawls away.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
And they just turn around and blast it. That is the creepiest, grossest thing. And so inventive.
I did want to propose, though, I do think we need, for this particular scene, the cheesiest scene award. And, you know, I'm in Vermont, you're in Wisconsin, so there's a lot of cheese happening in both of these states. That one did stand out to me as not quite being at the same level as some of the other special effects, because he's given the chest compressions, and then he goes into the paddles, and the way his chest opens, and he's got those comically large chompy teeth.
Yeah.
And it just bites off his arms. I don't know. That seemed a little disconnected.
When I'm slow on the draw and I need something to chaw, I hanker for a hunk of cheese.
But then once that initial scene closes out and what you just walked us through,
that
all holds up. But the chompy teeth thing, I'm going to nominate that for the cheesiest scene award here.
Yeah. But the movie became a cult classic. I don't know, in the years after it came out, I guess on VHS, people then came to realize that it's like a horror masterpiece.
Definitely. This is one that time has treated it much kinder. Its initial release, where it did get trashed, and I think it was called horror pornography, and it was too over the top. And
yeah, I was reading some of the reviews, and man, they were just like, it's like they were angry at John Carpenter. I guess it's the same year E.T. comes out. I feel like, I don't know. I think what you said earlier is right. I guess people were more in the mood for a cute, adorable alien, and this just seemed like it was so mean. They're killing dogs right away. It's so gross. It's
hard. Yes. So intense, disturbing. That there was very little warmth to embrace. Maybe Kurt Russell's character, and some of the characters had a little bit of comic relief and personality, but it was certainly not a welcoming, warm movie.
One criticism I read that I did kind of agree with is it is a little hard to differentiate some of the characters. There's a cast of 13 people. And, you know, I kept thinking of James Cameron in Aliens. He's really good at giving a character one line or one characteristic. And you're like, oh, that guy, he's the scared guy and she's the tough girl. And this movie doesn't have that. And so some of the characters, they kind of run together. When I was watching it last night, we were all saying to each other, wait, is this the guy that did this thing or said this earlier? Or is he
I can see that.
The doctor? I didn't think that any of them were bad, but I did have a hard time keeping track of which was which. Speaking of cheese, there's one other scene, I think. I like your Vermont, Wisconsin. Well, we have to offer the cheese award to each one of these movies. At one point, they've locked one of the doctors in a shed.
Yeah, Blair, because he starts smashing up the equipment and going off the deep end.
Right. Yeah. And you know, but the rest of the cast doesn't know that the reason he's doing that is he's aware that if the alien gets out, it's going to destroy the whole world. So he's actually trying to destroy everything to save the planet. Anyway, so they go to get him and the doors open and he's gone. And then they walk into that cabin and then they discover that there's a tunnel underneath the cabin. And they go into that tunnel, which why the hell would you ever go into a tunnel when you've seen what you've seen in this movie? And when they walk down there, there is a spaceship in this movie that is the cheesiest 1950s flying saucer spaceship. I couldn't believe that's what I was looking at. I thought, how exactly is that thing supposed to fly? That can't actually be a flying saucer. And yet, that is in fact what it is. The creature was like using, according to the movie, helicopter parts. I don't know why I just didn't get the freaking helicopter.
It was like the Hobby Lobby version of the spaceship. He's in the basement.
Yes, and it just looks like two plates sitting on top of each other. It's if you picture 1951 flying saucer, that is exactly what this is. There's so much effort put into let's make this creature when it morphs look like something nightmarish. But then when they got to the sci-fi part of it and the spaceship, boy, that spaceship looked cheesy. I guess maybe it was a nod to the 1950s movie.
One thing I wanted to mention, not necessarily a favorite scene, but I would say in our review of Pumpkinhead, it was one of our criticisms of that film was right out of the gate, they introduced a flamethrower in the first scene of Pumpkinhead.
Yes.
We get to the end of the movie and there was no payout on the flamethrower. You know, the thing, it really delivers in spades. Like,
yes,
it's more flamethrower than you could ever hope or wish for. And they're burning everything down.
Yes.
Spectacular fashion.
Flamethrowers and dynamite. And this is the only movie where I've ever seen what I thought only existed in Bugs Bunny cartoons, which is this box that has this handle that you pull up and push back down. I didn't know that was a real thing. Maybe prospectors used it when they were blowing through mountains to find gold. And the movie really moves. It does not feel like there's a wasted scene or sequence in the movie. They trimmed all the fat and just tells a relentless story.
Well paced.
And Kurt Russell's great in the movie.
How can you not talk about his incredible hair and beard? Like, you know, what a man.
Beard, yes.
Bringing the 80s cool.
Yes. Boy, he was cool in this movie. Like the 80s, because male stars like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, they all became super big guys. He wasn't like that, Kurt Russell, but he was so cool and clever. Did you ever see Big Trouble in Little China? That's another Carpenter movie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's another Carpenter movie. I actually don't think I saw that one. He's had a really long career. He's still relevant. He's shown up in Marvel films.
Right.
And...
He's great in this movie. It's funny to me that the way he takes control is not because he has like great leadership abilities or because they all look up to him, but because their primary weapon is flamethrowers, he just carries around a bundle of dynamite so they can't flamethrow him because if they set him on fire, they'll all explode.
Keith David, another great actor, he played Childs. He went on to have a robust career also, but this was his first movie. This was one of the first horror genre movies where the black guy makes it to the end. They don't kill him off. Like, so kind of progressive in that one of the significant characters at the end is not just another white guy.
I saw in a YouTube video about this movie that there is a way to tell exactly who is an alien and who is not. Did you see this? Like if a character, if a character has a light in their eye, they're human, and if their eyes are just kind of dark or black, it means they're not. I didn't watch the movie carefully enough to be able to discern that, but it does kind of suggest that Keith David's character, Childs, his eyes are black at the end. But even so, they're basically both left out in the cold. You just get the impression that they're going to freeze to death. So it's like they did stop the creature, but only for a limited amount of time until someone's going to come looking for this base, just like they did to the Norwegians.
Oh, let's bring this back to the base for investigation.
All right,
ready for the stabby rating? Score? Yeah, and again, could be controversial, but in our stabby rating, we've got 1 to 5, 5 being the highest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving this 5 stabs.
Yes, understandable.
Truly a classic. Everything we just talked about, really the gold standard for 80s horror. The story, the cast, the crew, the special effects, it really held up. And I thought it was just as gripping and compelling as when I saw it years ago. You know, a couple of things that we talked about in terms of not up to snuff in certain scenes, but overall, my God, it's a masterpiece and it really delivers.
No controversy from me. I'm also 5 stabbies.
Fine. Wow.
Yes. This is our first.
Incredible.
And it's not, I don't know that The Thing is one of my favorite movies. I don't know that I'd go back and like watch it every year or something. But from what it accomplished with what they had available to them, they had so much creativity on screen. And then they found a way to build the tension and ratchet it up in ways that just made each scene more and more horrifying. That scene early on where the dogs are attacked, it just gets more gross and more gross and more gross. And you feel like while you're watching it, it's horrifying and disgusting, and then it tops itself 10 seconds later. The scene in the autopsy is the same way. There are multiple scenes like that just find ways to get more and more gross and exciting and thrilling and terrifying. That bloodwork scene you talked about, part of what I loved about that was a bunch of the guys are tied to chairs because they don't know. They're all, they've become so paranoid about each other. And then one of the guy that actually turns is one of the people tied to the chairs. And then the other guys are tied to him. So everyone is they're like, let me out of this chair. Yeah. The guy tied to them. is starting to turn into this like grotesque monster, and they're all screaming, and the heroes can't get their flamethrower to work. I felt like I was in the scene screaming with them. Like, it was just total chaos. I did wonder, how long could the creature be mimicking a person and just stay in that person's life? Did you wonder about that? Like, if it took over my life, if it has all my thoughts and memories, does it just do my job permanently? When does it actually pop out?
Is it that it's under threat that it changes? That's sort of what they seem to allude to. That's why it would transform.
So if it's not under threat, does it just answer 100 emails a day and go to administrative meetings and live middle management? It like is raising my children, like doing
Dad.
Yeah. And what if it does a better job doing my chores on a daily basis than I do? And my wife is like, "You're doing a great job."
Kid punches you in the arm, and you're like, "Don't do that." Punches you again. I told you not to do that, son.
Right. That's what. Yes. Yeah. You. The one time you step on a Lego, that's when the creature comes out.
Totally. Like, Jesus. All right. You want to close us out?
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for listening to Slashback Cinema. If you like this episode, please subscribe, send us a note. If you saw The Thing as a kid, what did you think of the movie? We love hearing stories from people who have seen these movies or they resonate with them. So please share your story with us on social media.
Well, we got Instagram, we got TikTok. Visit us on the website, slashbackcinema.com.
Yes. And tell your friends about Slashback Cinema.
Please, help us out.